Before we get too deep into this, and before I forget, I wanted to mention this singer-songwriter that appears in just about every episode of season 2 of True Detective. Her name is Lyra Lynn, and she's the one that apparently she has a residency at this bar uh, that's like frequented by Colin Farrell and Vince Vaughn. I think Vince Vaughn owns the bar. His character owns the bar in it, and this singer's incredible. I mean, that's one thing I wanted to really like. Something that really stuck with me about season 2 is the soundtrack, which was basically just this woman. I mean, the best parts of it at least, and I think she was absolutely incredible. Like, this is where I'm discovering her, so I'm definitely gonna seek out her work now and see what other music she has, because every time, like, it really sets the tone. It sets the mood for the scene every single time that they use her. So just wanted to bring that up before I forgot. I knew I'd end up leaving it out if I didn't mention it right up front. So let me say, I had a lot of warnings going into this. I mentioned in the season 1 review that I didn't realize it was an anthology series until I finished season 1, and then I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not. A lot of people online were telling me that season 2 was trash, like it's terrible, it's not good. They say like season 3 gets better, but season 2 was a mess. And I've got to say, for the most part, I disagree with that. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed season 2. Now, I see where they're coming from. I think that it was a drastic change and a shock, you know, and it's hard to even make a comparison because it's very different storytelling. In season 1, everything is pretty much through the eyes of Woody Harrelson's character and Matthew McConaughey's character. You have two perspectives, that's it. And it's kind of third person because you're not really seeing it from either of their eyes, but that you're with one of those characters at every single moment of the show. Now, season 2 has a lot more characters, and I think for a lot of people that came off as like meandering, you know, it like went all over the place and it was hard to connect, and it was, you know, trying too hard to tell too many stories. The story was a little complicated, you know, especially to get into. Once you get into it, you figure out what's going on. You know, by halfway through, you're like fully invested. But I do get it. The first couple episodes, you're like, what is actually going on here? But I gotta say, the performances by everyone, and this is another stacked cast. Another stacked cast with stellar performances. Colin Farrell as Ray Valcoro is awesome. Like, this is, just like I said about Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson in the first season, this is some of his best work. And I love Colin Farrell. But, you know, he has great films, and he has, like, okay films. This was a great performance. A great character. I absolutely loved the running theme that I figured out in this series, and I'm guessing that will carry on into season 3, is the gray characters. These characters who are not quite good guys, but not really bad guys either. Like, they've done some bad things, or they have some bad habits, but they have a good heart deep down, or they've been put themselves into a situation sometimes, or their life has put them into a situation, and they make some terrible decisions. But man, you just really feel for Valcoro's character, especially with the situation with his son, and, you know, if they bring forth the paternity, he's going to lose his son. It's tough to watch. It's really tough to watch. Everyone's great in this, though. Rachel McAdams as Bezarides, she's fantastic. As I said, a lot more characters in this. You have 3 detectives, not 2, and then you also have Vince Vaughn's character, who I absolutely loved. Like, at first, I wasn't too keen on him, but by the end of the series, like, you're rooting for this guy. I thought he did fantastic. Some of Vince Vaughn's best work. I really think it's just like a space for actors to really lean in and do some deep work, and I thought he was fantastic. This is one of my favorite characters I've seen Vince Vaughn play, as this gangster turned straight guy turned back to gangster character, Frank Semyon. I thought he was great. I absolutely loved him. And then you have Taylor Kitsch, who I didn't even realize that was Taylor Kitsch. I know Taylor Kitsch from other things. I know Taylor Kitsch from The Terminal List, which I think he's fantastic in. And he's actually going to be in a prequel series for that storyline as well. But anyway, he plays Paul Woodrue, a guy who's like struggling with his sexual identity. He's like experimented with homosexuality, but he's never come out as gay. He's always tried to stay in straight relationships, and this is plaguing him throughout the entire series. Like, not only is he trying to solve this case, he's battling internally with this sexual identity and like doesn't really know who he is as a person. I think it's great, man. I think these are really thought out and kind of deep characters, man. Like, each one of them has some sort of trauma that they're dealing with, and it's great. It's like they're all thrown together because of their issues, and it's purposeful. Like, let's put these people in there. They'll likely fail because they had, they're pretty rough characters and they've all got baggage. But if they don't fail, we could just dump everything on them. Like, they have storied pasts that we can fall back on and really like blame stuff on them, and they're not credible. So I thought it was pretty smart storytelling. I really did. And like I said, I started rooting for a gangster by the end, and that's not unheard of. Like, there's other movies where you kind of root for the bad guy, but he ends up being not such a bad guy, and even Colin Farrell's character in it ends up saying, like, he's actually a pretty good guy, which I thought was great, because it's like he's voicing what we're thinking watching the show. Rough ending. I'm sorry if I'm giving any spoilers. I don't think I've given really spoilers yet, but the real spoiler is about to come out of my mouth right now, so if you don't want to hear it, skip forward a few seconds. But the rough ending where almost everyone dies. All of these main characters die. Vince Vaughn was one of the worst. I think, I think that Taylor Kitsch's character dies first, and then Colin Farrell's Ray Volcaro. Oh man, his was rough too. That might have been the worst. That might have been the worst, because he only gets caught up. He only gets tracked and tracked down by the bad guys, right? Who are supposed to be the good guys. He only gets tracked down because he wanted to go see his son one last time, from a distance. It was heart-wrenching, man. Like, when they spot him and he knows it, when they put a tracker on his car, those final, 30 minutes of episode 8 were rough, man. Really rough. And then Vince Vaughn facing all of his demons in his, like, final walk through the desert. Really kind of poetic, really kind of metaphoric, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I gotta say, man, I get why people were like, it was too much for some people. You really had to like care about the story, and most people probably didn't take time to really get invested in the story, because it's hard to get invested in at first. But once you do, it's a fantastic story. I would say give it a rewatch if you didn't like it, or if you quit watching it after a couple episodes, because I thoroughly enjoyed it, and a great mystery. It wasn't the best. Like, I didn't like it as much as season 1's story. I still would probably give season 1 the upper hand. I think it's a better put together story. I love the 20-year gap storytelling. This one did not do that as much. Like I said, very different show. You have a lot of different perspectives. It's jumping around to different characters a lot, and it's very different. It's much more about corruption rather than a serial killer. So very different crime drama, but still very good. Still very good. I would still give season 1 the upper hand, but this was better than I was expecting. Maybe it's because I went in with a little lowered expectations because of all the warnings. But I gotta say, guys, I disagree. I think season 2 was pretty damn fantastic, and now I'm really looking forward to season 3, because even the people who didn't like season 2 say season 3 starts to get it back on track. I'm just sad the show's over. I want to see more star-studded casts. I want to see True Detective season 4. Maybe that'll happen someday. Who knows? It works because it's anthology. This could go on forever. I don't know why it was canceled. I really don't. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on season 2. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, or if you're listening in podcast form, you can hit me up on Instagram or Twitter at RealBrettScott. If you're into this sort of thing, I love talking entertainment and pop culture. That's pretty much all I do on this channel. I throw in some other stuff as well, anecdotal life stuff and stories and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's entertainment and pop culture. So if you're into that sort of thing, please subscribe to the channel or favorite or follow Daily BS Podcast. And if you do decide to follow or favorite or subscribe, then I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks.